She stood in front of the mirror, applying that metallic shimmer she knew I hated. It caught the low light like blade edges. "You're really going?" I asked, already knowing the answer. Her silence wasn't defiance, it was fatigue. I'd asked too many times, always in different ways, hoping the shape of the question would change the outcome. "You don't trust me," she said flatly. I said nothing. What was left to trust? The invitations came encrypted through her ambassador's channel, flagged private. She claimed it was routine. I called it what it was, a social circus of predators and manipulators. Everyone knew the off-world envoy parties were less about diplomacy and more about alliances sealed in darker rooms. They didn't need Earth's approval to take what they wanted, only its willingness to look away. "I told you, it's just politics," she continued, adjusting her dress. 1 hour. That's all. You think I care how long you're gone? I snapped. It's what you're willing to be while you're there that bothers me. Her eyes met mine through the mirror. You make it sound like I'm for sale. I didn't respond. If I did, I'd say something cruel. Too late. My silence was worse. Her jaw tightened. She was wearing the same expression she had the night she told me she was marrying me for more than love, security, structure, future. I'd believed love was buried in those things. Lately, I wasn't so sure. You do what you want, I said, walking toward the balcony. You always do. I wish you could see how much I'm sacrificing, she said behind me. But you're too busy keeping score. I didn't turn around. My thumb hovered over the embedded pulse reader in my wrist, synced to the phantom protocol buried deep in my nervous system. I'd built it in a life I never told her about, back when trust wasn't an option but a liability. I'd never used it on someone I loved. I watched her reflection in the glass as she left. Head high. Shoulders straight. Like a queen walking into battle. When the door slid shut, I activated it. The hum of the subdermal capacitors vibrated through my bones. The apartment dimmed, security shutters deployed, neural signatures scrambled. I vanished from every grid I was connected to, official or otherwise. I was gone. There was a silence that followed, not absence, but pressure. Like the air knew I'd crossed a line even I didn't want to admit existed. I sat down, suddenly exhausted, and waited for regret. It didn't come. The messages started an hour later. You there? Thought we agreed no games tonight. Look, I get it. You're angry. Can we talk when I'm back? Are you actually ghosting me right now? Then nothing. 4 hours of silence. Then one final message. Fine. Be a coward. I deleted it without reading it twice. I told myself I needed this break, this space. That disappearing was strength. But I knew the truth. I hadn't ghosted her to protect myself. I'd done it to punish her. By the time dawn filtered in through the edge of the orbital ring, I had moved to the secondary unit deep in the maintenance district. Unregistered, isolated, and lined with tech so old it was immune to modern scans. The kind of place people went to when they didn't want to be found. I spent the night trying to unravel the fight, as if dissecting it could prove I was right. But it didn't matter. I already knew what this was really about, control. Or maybe fear. The kind of fear that makes you watch your own wife like an enemy asset. I'd spent too many years in operations where the first mistake was assuming someone loved you back. And yet I'd believed her once. Believed that her ambition didn't mean betrayal. That her smile wasn't a mask. So when she walked out that door, I didn't lose her. I confirmed everything I'd feared was true. There was no comfort in being right. Around midday, I cracked a ration seal and stared out into the infinite lattice of ships and cargo lanes, wondering if she'd even try to look for me. Wondering if I wanted her to. That's when the knock came. 3 slow, precise hits. Impossible. No one should have been able to trace me here. Not even her. My blood ran cold. I approached the door without sound, checked the monitors. Nothing. Static. That was worse. A 4th knock. Soft. Measured. I disabled the manual locks and opened it an inch. She was standing there. Hair tied back, no shimmer. Just a simple, neutral-tone jacket over a thin environmental suit. Calm. Collected. You always were predictable, even when invisible, she said. I stared at her, stunned. Not just that she'd found me, but that she looked disappointed. How? I asked flatly. She held up a tiny coil, coated in iridescent shielding. You still sleep on the right side of the bed, she said. Your dreams leak into the fabrics. It wasn't hard to extract residuals. The military trained you to hide, but not from someone who lives in your head. I felt the accusation rise, but she held up a hand. Save it. I didn't come to fight. I came to return your fear. What the hell does that mean? She pulled something from her coat. A neural diary chip. You want answers? Watch this. Or don't. Either way, I'm done chasing ghosts. And just like that, she turned and left. No demands. No apology. Just silence. I held the chip for a long time before even considering whether I wanted to know what was inside. Part of me still wanted to believe I was the one in control. That I'd chosen silence because I was strong. But her eyes had said otherwise. And suddenly, I wasn't sure which of us had truly disappeared. I didn't watch the chip immediately. I told myself I didn't care. That I already knew whatever explanation she had would be carefully curated, designed to make her the victim and me the monster. But the truth clung to me like gravity. I wanted to know if I'd misjudged her. If I'd been wrong. Or worse, if I'd been right and it still didn't matter. The neural interface sparked as I slotted the chip. Her voice filled my head, clear, measured, but intimate in a way I hadn't heard in months. If you're hearing this, you already disappeared. You did what I knew you'd do. That line stung more than I expected. I didn't go to that party to hurt you, she continued. I went because I needed to know if you saw me as your partner, or as a possession you were waiting to catch betraying you. There was no background noise, just her voice. Deliberate. Unemotional, at first. You don't talk about your missions, and I stopped asking. You said secrecy kept us safe. But it's also what turned you into someone I had to work around, not with. You ghost people, not just physically. Emotionally. You taught me how to survive that. She paused. I felt it in my spine. I know you think the party was about ambition. That I was playing politics behind your back. But it wasn't about any of them. It was about you. I wanted to see if you'd actually talk to me when pushed, or if you'd disappear like you always threaten. Another pause. You disappeared. The chip fed visual memories into my cortex, snapshots of us in earlier years. Her watching me sleep. Her turning off a comlink before I could see the news feeds. Me sitting at the edge of the bed, locked behind my eyes, unresponsive. One memory, from our second year of marriage, had me slamming my hand against a comm panel after a routine briefing triggered something from a past mission. She had knelt beside me, whispering that she wasn't afraid. I remembered none of it. Her voice resumed. I stopped asking where you went on those long nights. Not because I trusted you, but because I didn't want the truth. Maybe you were loyal. Maybe not. But I couldn't keep guessing and surviving on silence. I'd spent so long preparing for betrayal that I'd become one. Everything I did, every move I made around you, was a strategy. A test. You think I went to that party to humiliate you? No. I went because I was tired of being the only one playing by rules either of us agreed on. There was no dramatic swell, no sobbing revelation. Just the quiet, suffocating weight of reality being rearranged. You trained for war. I trained to stay married to you. Neither of us won. She cut the feed. That was it. No declaration of love. No plea for forgiveness. Just a mirror turned directly toward me. And I hated what I saw. I sat there for hours, rewatching nothing, just listening to my own breathing. I had blamed her for changing, for ambition, for secrets, but I'd offered her nothing in return. No space, no vulnerability. I expected absolute transparency from someone I never fully let inside. When I left the service, I promised myself I'd never let anyone get that close again. Somehow I believed marrying her was the exception, not the betrayal of that vow. I'd never considered that letting her in meant more than just proximity. It meant surrendering suspicion, not treating love like a long con. I remembered a night 2 years ago when she woke up from a nightmare, drenched in sweat. I'd been up already, wired from a memory spike I hadn't told her about. She reached for me and I recoiled, not from her, but from my own inability to be present. She curled back into herself and didn't say a word. That silence was one of many I never questioned. Until now. It was always easier to blame her. My comm panel flickered. A blocked transmission pinged once, then disappeared. She was still reaching out, barely. Or maybe it was a system echo from before. Either way, I suddenly couldn't stand the bunker walls anymore. I left within the hour. The city hadn't changed, but it felt colder. Crowds blurred past me, faces hidden behind visors and emotion filters. I remembered how she used to call them ghosts, those people who couldn't feel anything unless it was filtered through an app or a fix. I used to laugh. Now I understood. I tracked her signal using a backdoor system only a few old intelligence contacts still maintained. It took me to the edge of a diplomatic housing district, quiet, heavily patrolled, facades designed to calm and deceive. She was there, sitting alone in a small atrium lit by artificial starlight. She didn't flinch when I approached. Didn't even look up. "I watched it," I said. She nodded. "I figured. I didn't know. You didn't want to." That hurt more than I let show. "I thought I was protecting myself." "You were," she said. "Just not from me." I sat across from her. She didn't stop me. "I used Phantom Protocol to disappear." I justified it. "But that wasn't strength. That was fear." "I know," she said. "That's why I left the chip. I needed to know if you'd finally face yourself." I looked at her. Really looked. Not the projection, not the adversary. Just her. "I didn't cheat," she added. "I know." A long silence stretched between us. Not hostile. Just full. "I don't know if we're fixable," I said. "Maybe not," she replied. "But maybe that's not the point." We sat with that. Two people no longer pretending. No one chasing, no one hiding. Just there. Together. For now. 4-0. We didn't speak for a week after that. No contact, no messages. Just space. Real space, not the silent warfare we used to weaponize, but something still and difficult. Necessary. I moved back into the main apartment. She didn't. I didn't ask where she was staying. That wasn't the kind of question I had the right to ask anymore. She had given me the truth, and I'd done nothing yet to prove I deserved more of it. I started cleaning out my classified archive. I didn't know why. Old mission data, behavioral maps, psychological counterprofiles. All the pieces I used to track, anticipate, outmaneuver people I never trusted. A few months ago, I'd quietly started one on her. Not surveillance, just patterns. Body language. Tone shifts. A private index of suspicion disguised as concern. I deleted it all. Trust, I realized, wasn't about proving someone else right or wrong. It was about choosing to believe, even when belief meant risk. Especially when it did. The chip she left behind never left my wrist. Not because I needed to replay it, I didn't. I kept it because it was proof that she hadn't given up on me entirely, even when she should have. When I'd given her every reason to. The first time we talked again, it was her who initiated. She sent a voice-only ping. "I'm not asking you to fix things. I'm asking if you're willing to try." That was all. I answered with coordinates. Neutral ground. A private arboretum dome halfway between sectors. No security, no surveillance. Just plant life imported from Earth, humming quietly under artificial sun. She met me there. No dress. No pretense. Just her. Tired, guarded, but present. I've been going through our old messages, she said. The early ones. From before you started deflecting. Before I started weaponizing silence. I nodded. You were different. Still careful, but reachable. So were you, I said. You used to tell me what scared you. You used to ask. We sat across from each other at a table grown from Martian ashwood. A relic of the first colony's peace agreement, back when alliances still meant something. She took a breath. I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer it honestly. Okay. Do you still want this marriage because you love me, or because losing control terrifies you? I didn't answer right away. She deserved better than reflex. I let it sink in, let the silence hold. I want it because I'm finally starting to understand what it costs to keep running. And because I love you enough to stop. Her face didn't change. But her shoulders relaxed, just slightly. It was enough. She leaned forward. There's something else. I braced but nodded. I've been seeing a neurotherapist. Off the record. After the last summit, I couldn't shake the feeling I was splitting in two. One version of me was your wife. The other was someone I didn't recognize, someone playing a game I didn't remember entering. I waited. They told me what I already knew. I was trying to become who I thought you needed instead of telling you who I really was. That's not on you, I said. Yes, it is, she replied. It was easier to mold myself than to challenge you. And I resented you for every second of it. We were both quiet. I went to that party knowing you'd take it as betrayal, she continued. I justified it as necessary. But it was a message, not a mission. I wanted to see if you'd ever stop policing me and actually try understanding me. And I failed. No, she said. You did what scared you. You vanished. But then you came back. You listened. We sat in that quiet truth. I talked to a handler, I said. Told him I wanted to deregister the stealth protocol. She blinked. That's irreversible. I know. But I don't want to live like a shadow anymore. I want to be seen. Even if it hurts. A pause. Then, you're serious? Yeah. She looked away, toward the thick-leaf vine wrapping the pillar beside us. I think we need to rebuild. Not resume. Rebuild. I agree. No secrets, she said. No disappearing, I answered. She nodded. I still don't know what we look like after this, she said. Neither do I. But maybe that's a good thing. She smiled faintly, then stood. I'm going to leave first. Not because I'm walking away, but because this time, I want you to sit with the silence and not fill it with ghosts. I watched her go. And for once, I didn't feel abandoned. I felt something else. Possibility. I started therapy 2 days later. Not the mandated kind the agency made us cycle through after missions, where you lie because you know what answers keep you in rotation. This was different. Civilian. Unfiltered. I told the truth like it was an extraction mission, painful, careful, necessary. The therapist was human, which helped. No neural syncs, no mind scans. Just questions I hadn't let anyone ask before. When did you stop feeling safe in your marriage? She asked. I didn't flinch. I said, I don't think I ever did. That was the first crack in the wall I'd built around myself. I kept thinking about the way my wife had looked at me before she walked away from the dome. Not angry. Not afraid. Just honest. It was the same look I used to give her, back when I believed love was something we built together, not something we defended against each other. We didn't talk for another 4 days. No updates. No reassurances. Just distance. It didn't feel like punishment this time, it felt like breath. I didn't panic. I let the silence exist without assigning it meaning. That was new. When she finally called, there was no dramatic lead-in. Just her voice, level and direct. I've decided to transfer off-world. Temporary posting. 6 months. My chest tightened, but I didn't interrupt. I need space to find out who I am without the shape of you around me, she said. I understood. It didn't make it easier, but I didn't fight it. I support it, I said. I think it's right. There was a long pause. I didn't expect you to say that. 6 months is nothing if it helps us both figure out how to stop bleeding into each other. I've already signed the contract. I leave in 5 days. Will you tell me where you're going? No, she said. But I'll let you know when I'm ready to talk again. I exhaled. Okay. I didn't ask for more. I wanted to, but I knew asking would make it about me again. And this wasn't about me. Not anymore. After the call ended, I sat in our apartment, the one we had picked together 3 years ago after a mission debrief turned into a spontaneous wedding proposal. It had always been too big, too clean, too engineered for a marriage built on raw things like fear and hope. Now it felt like an empty shell. Not painful, just echoing. I spent the next few days doing something I hadn't done since the start of our relationship. I went dark without disappearing. No missions. No classified systems. No hiding. I walked through the city without armor. Let people bump into me. Let conversations happen that had nothing to do with strategy or risk. I visited her favorite tea house alone. Sat at the seat she used to claim. The server recognized me and gave me the drink she always ordered. I drank it in silence, thinking about all the times I could have asked how her day went and didn't. I started writing. Nothing poetic. Just truths I hadn't said out loud. Paragraphs about how much I'd failed to listen, about the ways I used distance like a scalpel. I didn't know if I'd send them. That wasn't the point. I wrote them because I needed to see myself outside the lens of suspicion. When the 5th day came, I didn't wait by the terminal to see if she'd message again. I went to the arboretum, sat in the same place, and let the simulated wind run over my skin. I imagined her already gone, boarding a transport, stepping into another kind of silence. And I felt calm. For the first time since this started, I wasn't waiting for a message to feel whole. I wasn't imagining her coming back so I could feel redeemed. I just let her exist, wherever she was, without my control pressing against the edges of her freedom. 2 hours later, a packet came through. Not a message. Not a call. A memory chip. No sender tag. No encryption. I plugged it into my private reader. It wasn't a confrontation. It was a recording of us, years ago. A captured moment I didn't know she had. We were on the floor of our first apartment. I was building something, she was laughing about how useless I was with tools. She leaned in, kissed my cheek, and whispered something the chip replayed in perfect fidelity. You don't have to protect me from you. I chose this. I hadn't remembered that moment. I'd buried it under years of cold calculations and reflexive suspicion. But she hadn't. She'd carried it all this time. And now she was handing it back, not as leverage, but as evidence. That once we'd built something without armor. That it had been real. That it could be again. If we let it. The memory chip sat next to my terminal for 3 days before I could stop watching it. Not because I was sentimental. Because it held something unrecognizable, a version of us untainted by strategy, surveillance, suspicion. I didn't realize how badly I missed that until I saw it in her eyes, even years ago, even then. In the silence that followed, I rebuilt my days around routine, not avoidance. Morning walks. Afternoon reports. Therapy 3 times a week. I stopped explaining my emotions as data points. Stopped asking myself who was winning. That language had no place anymore. Winning was never the goal. Understanding was. The agency reached out, offered me another off-world posting. No pressure, they said. Strategic advisor. Minimal field work. Prestige. My first instinct was yes. A clean break. But I paused. I thought about what it meant to keep running towards structure instead of sitting with chaos. What it meant to abandon an unfinished chapter because the rewrite was uncomfortable. I turned it down. 2 weeks passed with no contact. I didn't reach out. Neither did she. I imagined her on a moonside diplomatic route, immersed in a life that didn't require her to shrink to fit inside a man's paranoia. One morning, I woke up and realized I hadn't checked the secure channel in days. That used to be the first thing. Obsession dressed as protocol. But now, silence no longer meant threat. It meant permission. I found myself visiting our old places, not out of nostalgia, but inventory. What was real? What was projection? There was the gallery where she once stood too long in front of a kinetic sculpture, watching the shadows shift like time-lapse memories. I used to make fun of her for that. Now I saw it, the way she looked for pattern inside motion. She wasn't daydreaming. She was decoding. Just like me. I went back to therapy and brought it up. The counselor said something that stuck. You didn't marry the wrong person. You both stopped letting each other be whole. That line looped for days. It was the most honest assessment of our failure I'd heard. That week, I got a message. No signature, but I knew it was her. One line. I'm starting to see who I am when I'm not trying to keep the peace. I read it 6 times. Didn't reply right away. Didn't dissect it for hidden meaning. I let it land. Let it change nothing and everything at once. I wrote her back later that night. I'm learning how to sit with silence without needing to be right inside it. She didn't reply. That was okay. It was communication, not control. The days that followed were clearer. Not perfect, not linear, but clearer. I'd stopped seeing love as a ledger. I no longer counted gestures or weighed apologies. Some days I missed her like a phantom limb. Other days I didn't think about her until night. That was part of the healing. I wrote letters. Real ones. Printed on paper. I didn't send them. Just folded them into a case on my desk. Pages of things I would say only when I knew I wasn't saying them to win. One letter read, You weren't unfaithful. You were exhausted. I confused your defiance for betrayal because I didn't understand the cost of constantly proving your loyalty to someone who didn't offer the same. Another. I'm sorry I used silence as a punishment instead of a pause. I didn't know the difference then. I do now. I started working with veterans in recovery. Not fieldwork, conversation. Men and women who'd built their identities around control, and then watched their lives collapse under the weight of it. I saw myself in all of them. Not in the missions, but in the aftermath. In the emotional debris they never learned to process. One night, after a long group session, I found another chip on my doorstep. No message. Just a ribbon around it. Same kind she used to use when she wrapped gifts back when we still celebrated anniversaries without dread. This time it wasn't audio. It was a journal. Entries. Her words, her thoughts, raw and unscripted. I'm learning I was never too much. I was just too loud for someone who didn't know how to hear his own voice without echo. He wasn't cruel. Just scared. But fear unspoken becomes control. And control disguised as protection becomes a cage. I still love him. That hasn't changed. But now I love myself enough to know love isn't supposed to cost you your identity. I read every line. Then read them again. She wasn't asking for anything. Just telling me who she was becoming. That was the gift. It occurred to me that maybe we wouldn't get back together. Maybe she was becoming someone I'd never meet again, at least not as her husband. That didn't scare me anymore. Love, I realized, wasn't about preservation. It was about release. I stood at the edge of the observation dome, watching the artificial sunrise crawl across the simulated horizon. Somewhere out there, she was living a life shaped by her own gravity. And for once, I wasn't orbiting her. I was standing still. 3 months passed. I didn't keep track like I used to. No obsessive calendar ticks. No countdowns. Just lived. Days stretched longer without emotional surveillance hanging over every conversation I wasn't having. I still wrote. Sometimes in the middle of the night when clarity hit like a neural spark. One night I wrote. She was never the escape. She was the mirror. I just wasn't ready to see myself yet. I wasn't angry anymore. Not at her. Not at me. Anger had been a shield for fear, and fear had ruled my decisions for years. Every vanishing act, every test I ran behind her back, none of it made me safer. It made me smaller. One morning, without thinking, I cleaned out our storage unit. Her old things were still there. Jackets, worn shoes, the puzzle box we never finished. I didn't throw anything out. I just boxed them properly. Respectfully. I didn't label the containers hers or ours. Just memory. I didn't cry. I thought I might. But what I felt was something more surprising: relief. The weight was gone. Not because I'd let go of her, but because I'd stopped trying to bend everything back into a shape that fit who we used to be. I thought about how many times I'd told myself I was the logical one, the rational one. But logic without emotional accountability is just denial wearing armor. And I had worn that armor for too long, then blamed her for not loving steel. Then she called. No warning. No encrypted link. Just a standard relay, unsecured, ordinary. I answered. Her voice was steady. I'm back in system. Landed last night. I waited. I'm not here to resume anything. I just thought you should know. Thank you, I said. I've changed, she added. But not into someone else. Just into myself. I can hear that. I met someone, she said. Then paused. Not like that. A friend. Someone who sees me without the expectations. I'm glad. Another pause. That used to scare you. It did. And now? I want you to have people in your life who make you feel real. She exhaled, and I realized she had been bracing for something I didn't deliver. The old version of me would have interrogated her motives. This version understood that trust isn't conditional. It's a decision you make over and over, not because someone earns it, but because withholding it keeps you small. I'm not here to restart us, she said again. Just to say thank you. For letting me go without turning me into the villain. You were never the villain, I replied. You were the first person I ever loved enough to ruin. And now I'm learning how to love without breaking things. The line went quiet. Then she said something I hadn't expected. I kept one of your letters. I didn't ask which one. I read it when the silence got too loud. She continued. It helped. I'm glad it found you. Another pause. You know I don't hate you, she said. I don't need you to love me, I replied. But I'm grateful you don't hate me. That's growth, she said with a soft laugh. I've had time. So have I. There was no plan after that. No offer to meet. No suggestion of closure. Because this wasn't a movie, and not all stories end in reunion. Some end in understanding. We ended the call on a long silence. Not awkward. Not heavy. Just full of what we'd both learned to carry with grace. I stood by the window after and watched the transport lanes overhead. No idea where she was. Didn't need to know. What mattered was that she was free, and so was I. Not from each other, but from the toxic patterns we once called love. Later that night, I wrote one last letter. Not to send. Just for me. You taught me that love isn't about being right. It's about being real. I couldn't give you that then. But I'm giving it to myself now. And that's the first time I've ever felt whole. I folded it and placed it in the last empty sleeve. Some part of me will always love her. Not because I want her back, but because she changed me. Because she walked away with dignity, and let me do the same. This wasn't a love story. It was a story about love, and how sometimes, the most honest thing you can do is leave before you break what you claim to protect. I went to sleep that night without waiting for a message, a ping, a sign. And in that quiet, for the first time in years, I wasn't looking for her. I was here. With me. And it was enough. 4-0.